Coming up on today's Locked On Bucks, we get you set for the final game, the West Coast road trip. The Bucks in Denver to take on the Nuggets. Any updates on Damian Lillard? How does Kyle Kuzma fit with this group? And how much danger are the Bucks actually in? We'll get into that conversation coming up after this on Locked On Bucks.
You are Locked On Bucks, your daily Milwaukee Bucks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into Locked On Bucks. I am Justin Garcia, joined as always by Camille Davis. We thank you for making this your first listen of the day and for checking out the Locked On Bucks newsletter. If you have not done so yet, you can still sign up for free at lockedondaily.com and get your day started with the all-new free Locked On Bucks newsletter. Today's episode of Locked On Bucks is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Camille, when we last spoke, I don't remember if we actually said this on the show or if it was just the two of us talking off the air, but kind of put it out there. Let's see what happens with that injury report. I'm kind of curious if it's not just Damian Lillard ruled out, but if we get more messaging of it's going to be X amount of games or he'll be reevaluated at this period of time. We have not gotten any of that messaging yet, which I suppose no news can be construed as a good news, but we're just kind of in the dark with Dame and with the opponent as well. As we record this, neither the Bucks nor Denver Nuggets have submitted their injury report, and Nikola Jokic has missed, 4 straight games with an ankle injury. So we're still in the dark as to whether or not we'll see these teams at full strength or close to it.
Yeah, it feels for the Bucks. At this point, I would be surprised if Dame was active for the Bucks, just based on the conversations that we have heard so far, especially with Doc mentioning that, Dame was getting some imaging done and they still had to kind of wait and see what the prognosis was for his calf injury. So if Dame is active, I would be pleasantly surprised because I do think it's important they continue to get those reps heading into the playoffs. But on the Nugget side of things, I'm really curious as if this is the game that Jokic returns to, because it has been said that he's day-to-day. They expect him to return at some point during their current homestand that they're on. And a matchup against the Milwaukee Bucks feels like a great place to start.
Yes, it has also been said Damian Lillard is day-to-day. We'll see how that goes with the Bucks. But, unfortunately, we don't have any concrete updates here for either of those two as we start to take a look at this matchup with the Nuggets. We'll take a closer look at what challenges Denver presents at the end of the show. But just to clean up some of the conversations we've had in recent days here, I was struck by this. I don't remember how I came across it, but Evan Sidery, who is a contributor for Forbes, had tweeted this out of and look, we know what we're doing when we do these types of tweets. The Bucks have been better when Kyle Kuzma is off the floor than with him on the floor since they traded for him, and puts out the offensive rating, defensive rating, and net rating in both of those instances, and adds the comment that Kuzma's fit in Milwaukee thus far has been clunky at best. So I'm assuming these are NBA.com numbers that Evan is using here. But with Kuzma on the floor, it's a 110.7 offensive rating, which is 25th in the league. With him on the floor, it's a 110 defensive rating, which would be third and right in line with where the Bucks traditionally are here. So a 0.6 net rating. With him off the floor, a 115.6 offensive rating, a 106.9 defensive rating, and a plus 8.7 net rating. Now, where I would push back on that is, especially with those lineup dependent statistics, I tend to use cleaning the glass for that. And the numbers cleaning the glass produces are much, much different with Kyle Kuzma off the floor than they are with Kyle Kuzma on the floor. I mean, it's still, the numbers are better with him off than on, but instead of whatever that number was that we referenced of a plus 8.7 net rating, it's a plus 2.2, taking the garbage time out of it with him off the floor, and about a +1 with him on the floor. The offense has been better with Kyle Kuzma off the floor, and I think that matches the eye test that we've talked about. The clunkiness is, how do you fit him next to Giannis? At first, when Kyle Kuzma was getting acclimated with this group, you didn't have Giannis on the floor for those first couple of games, and he had a chance to take over the Giannis role, the guy that pushes it in transition and attacks in that sense. And now that he's back, I think the thing many of us wondered, how does the spacing work?
Mm-hmm.
I think you could probably say it hasn't, but it's been clunky at best so far, and that's arguably the biggest thing the Bucks have to figure out going into the playoffs, because you or I, nobody that's watched this group can sit there and say Kyle Kuzma has not shown you value defensively. And we talk about guys like Andre Jackson Jr. being taken out of the rotation because of the moves that you made. Kyle Kuzma is one of those moves. So you still need that defense, but you got to figure out, how do we make this work with number 34 on the floor?
You do. And it was a question that I brought up on the show as well. We talked about it on Technical Foul last week, of just what is it that Kyle Kuzma does well, and what position do you need to get him on the court offensively
what
for
was
him to
the
have
tone you used when you asked that question, Camille?
Hey, listen, I didn't know disrespect. It's just the question out here of how do you best utilize a Kyle Kuzma, given the fact that he is not someone who has been an outstanding catch and shoot player. And a lot of times the players you've surrounded Giannis with on the court have been plus catch and shoot guys from three, and able to knock that shot down. And that's just something that hasn't been consistent in Kyle Kuzma's shot profile, which is when we talked about the trade initially, I said the hope is that, he gets better quality looks. They're more open, and he's able to knock down a higher percentage than what we saw earlier in the season with the Washington Wizards, where he was shooting 28% from three. And the numbers haven't gotten significantly better here in Milwaukee. So I think for the Bucks, it's just, what is the best way to utilize Kyle Kuzma? And a lot of what he does well can be said that it's the way that the Bucks utilize Giannis as well. A good roller, somebody who you want closer to the basket, doesn't finish at the same clip around the basket as a Giannis, but those seem to be like the best quality looks for Kyle Kuzma. And yeah, he can hit a couple of those catch and shoot threes if he's open. Don't need him doing like the sidestep threes or the shot creation type of threes as much, but just finding the ways to utilize him. And if other teams are going to play him in a way where they're hiding their bigs on Kyle Kuzma so they can help off, getting Kyle Kuzma involved in those actions as well. I think for Kuz, it has to be a little bit more off-ball movement and just utilizing him in those sets to get him higher quality looks than what he has gotten. That's just kind of like a catch-and-shoot guy here in Milwaukee so far.
Well, and here's the most interesting part of all of it is not just looking at the full spectrum of Kuz on the floor versus Kuz off the floor. I dug into the individual lineups that we've seen all throughout the season. So with the Bucks and with the Wizards, it is quickly becoming the most possessions that Kyle Kuzma has been a part of when he's playing with the current starting five for the Bucks. Well, not current technically, but the envisioned starting five with Dame, Taurean Prince, Giannis, and Brook Lopez. He is right now 38 possessions away from that being the most he's played with any other four players so far this season. But that's where it gets fascinating is, we said figuring out the fit around Giannis because of the way he plays and the fact that the catch and shoot numbers are not what you would love to see for a player on the floor with Giannis here. But I mean, it has far and away been the best lineup he's been a part of this season. It's a plus 6.7 net rating in those minutes where it's Giannis, Kyle Kuzma, Brook Lopez, Taurean Prince, and Damian Lillard. Offense is a 116 offensive rating. It's not great. It's better than where the Bucks currently are. And the defense still below a 110 defensive rating, which has been really good. So they've been a very good rebounding team on the defensive glass, 92nd percentile in those minutes. And they've been, I think, just good enough on offense and continue to have that strong defense. So we all assume, hey, well, this doesn't work. You got to change the lineups with Kyle Kuzma and Giannis out there. And the numbers are screaming, no, that's where it's been most effective for Kyle Kuzma on the Bucks so far this season.
Yeah, it's just continue to get comfortable. Like we have to keep in mind. I say it a lot. This is not NBA 2K. When you trade somebody, you don't just get to have everything go smooth thereafter because you're the singular person controlling all 5 guys on the court. Like it takes time to develop that chemistry, understanding where guys want the ball, and learning how to play with one another. And a lot of times, franchises make the guess that hey, talent's going to win out. If we get these guys together, they'll figure it out and talent will win out. And that's the hope for the Bucks, because when you look at how this team is constructed now, it's built around supporting Dame and Giannis the best they can, having more options, being more versatile. And for the shortcomings you can point to in Kyle Kuzma's game, I think that he brings a lot of positive things to the court for this Milwaukee Bucks team and can fit really well around what they're doing, especially with that starting lineup.
A lot to continue to pour over here, and I'm sure there's a lot of thoughts out there in the community. So leave your thoughts on the Kyle Kuzma fit so far. Is this a starting lineup change? Is it we got to be cognizant of who he's on the floor with, or is it just fine and we're making too much out of this? Leave your thoughts in the comment section, and Camille and I will address those on these upcoming shows here. We will take a look at the opponent in the Denver Nuggets, but I do want to get back to something else we briefly touched on yesterday's show, and that is the standings. Are the Bucks in trouble? And how much trouble are they in? If you do, in fact, believe, yes, they are in trouble. We'll take a look at the rest of the Eastern Conference landscape coming up after this on Locked On Bucks. This next segment of Locked On Bucks is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. There is nothing like watching basketball live. The energy of the crowd, the sound of the sneakers on the hardwood, maybe even a celebrity sighting courtside. If you want to catch a game in person, Game Time makes getting tickets easier than ever. Game Time's new feature, Game Time Picks, filters out the fluff and shows you only the best deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time scrolling through thousands of tickets. Maybe you just checked out the Game Time app and you see there's amazing deals that bring on some huge matchups coming up here. I mean, specifically a big matchup, the final game of the regular season for the Bucks against the Detroit Pistons. There's super deals, as well as Game Time Picks highlights those super deals, giving you the best bang for your buck. Best of all, the peace of mind that comes with using Game Time Picks. You can see seat views before you make the purchase. There are no surprise fees, and a lowest price guarantee mean you can book with total confidence. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA to get $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. All right, the standings. Camille, you are 2 games back of the Indiana Pacers and just a half game in front of the Detroit Pistons. We are recording this Tuesday evening. The Pistons are just about to tip off against the San Antonio Spurs. So as you listen to this, you may be tied with the Detroit Pistons, or at least you're a half or a full game in front of the Pistons. But going through all of that with the standings, and I think we referenced playoff status in their latest projections. It was better than a 60% chance for the Pacers to be the 4 seed. I think it was better than a 50% chance for the Bucks to be the 5 seed. 2 games. I'm not to get on the soapbox here, but it's a lot to make up in 11 games. You know, like I think we take that for granted because you think it's just 2 games. But we went through. Look, the Pacers right now are playing at a pace that sees them winning 7 out of every 11 games. Mm-hmm. They got 11 games left. If they win 7, you got to go 9-2 to tie this team and get the 4 seed. So let's start there. Are you willing to shut the door on the Bucks getting the 4 seed as of this moment?
I can't shut the door because it's still mathematically possible. Like, I know what it would take, especially when you look at who the Pacers have to play coming up. They have some, what you could call easier games. They see the Wizards twice. They see the Jazz. They see the Hornets. They have the Magic, the Kings, the Thunder, the Cavs twice, the Nuggets, and the Lakers. So when you hear who they're playing against, like, there's definitely some comp in there, but also some games where it's like, even if they sat some guys, I would expect the Pacers to be able to win this game. So for what the Pacers have going on, like the schedule in front of them, it's not super difficult. But on the Bucks side of things, like you have the Pelicans twice, you have the Sixers, the Heat, the Suns again, the Hawks, the Knicks, the Nuggets, the Wolves, and then you have the Pistons twice. So depending on how you look at it, like one could say the Bucks schedule is a little bit easier than the Pacers, and that's how Tankathon has it rated. But again, we know how some of those games can be, especially with the Hawks, who Tankathon considers an easier team, quote unquote, for the Bucks. Like the Bucks are going to have to pick up their pace of winning in addition to hoping that the Pacers can lose some games along the way. And when your fate's in someone else's hands, it's always a bit more risky. But I can't close the door all the way.
I'm right there with you that I am a numbers person, and the numbers suggest you're not going to be the 4 seed, but the numbers also say, hey, there's still a chance. The door is not closed yet. Now, for the Pacers, the challenges on the schedule are they're starting to be fleeting, but it's really immediately. They have the Lakers later on tonight, Wednesday night. And then they have a road game in Oklahoma City against the Thunder on Saturday night. After that, you mentioned the rest of the teams they have. They do have the Denver Nuggets on the road, the second to last week of the regular season. And then their final 3 games are home against the Cavs, home against the Magic, in Cleveland against the Cavs. That's what's making up a lot of the difficulty in this remaining schedule for the Pacers. And I think they're middle of the pack on Tankathon. But the fact that the 2 games left with Cleveland are placed on the schedule where they are, the Cavs are going to have the 1 seed in the East locked up by then. So I am going to be curious to see who do you see, or what version of the Cavs do you see in those games. So that is kind of a break for Indiana. The Bucks, as we speak now, have the 9th easiest schedule remaining in the league, and the Pistons are up there for one of the more challenging schedules that's left. But, this is a Pistons team, Camille, and I think this is what stands out the most is, sure, there's challenges on this schedule, but you look at the teams that they have been hanging in there with and beating, and by the numbers, this Pistons team has been one of the best in the league, not just since the All-Star break, but for the last handful of weeks now. This team, in terms of their net rating and defensive rating, the Pistons are consistently in the top 7 or so in both of those areas. That this isn't just a hot stretch. This is the Pistons really since early February, maybe even late January. They have been a much, much different and more consistent team.
Yeah, they have. And coming out of the All-Star break, they've been 11-6 since the break. They've been the 5th best team in net rating. All my stats are according to Cleaning the Glass here, but 5th best team in net rating during that time after All-Star break, 13th best offense, 3rd best defense over that time coming out of the All-Star break for Detroit. And again, you can point to it being like, well, that's just the last couple of weeks. But even on the season as a whole, when you look at the numbers, like Milwaukee, Detroit, and Indiana are all right there next to each other with net rating on a Clean Glass. You have Milwaukee at now 11 spot with 1.9, Detroit in that 12 spot, 1.8, and Indiana in the 13 spot with 1.7 of their net ratings. Like, these teams are a lot closer by the numbers than one might expect. When they play each other, what you lean on is like, well, the Bucks have Giannis. Like, that is the engine that drives this car, so on and so forth. But you have to put some respect on Cade Cunningham, who I think all NBA second team, third team, maybe. Like, he has had a year, and Cade Cunningham is for real. And this is a Pistons team that is highly motivated after the past seasons that they have had, and being in this playoff race right now is something that team is taking very seriously. And one thing about young teams, and they got the vets around them, so they're not like a real young team, but with Cade being like their key guy here, like sometimes when you're that young dude and you're getting in the situation, you're just kind of like, I don't have anything to fear, because what do I have to fear in front of me? And that can be dangerous as well.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, and even going with the NBA.com's stats here, since the All-Star break, the Pistons have the 2nd best defensive rating in the league. The Bucks are 3rd, but all of the top 4, really top 5, it starts to get a little wonky with some of the teams, but they're all right up there, separated by basically 1 point per 100 possessions. The 1 through 5 post All-Star break, in defensive efficiency is the Warriors, Pistons, Bucks, Trailblazers, and Raptors to
March
round things
basketball.
out. 117.7 offensive rating after the break for the Pistons is 9th best in the league, and the Bucks are 17th best in the league in their offensive rating. So the Pistons right now are in the top 10 in offense, defense, and net rating after the All-Star break. The Bucks would be there if it weren't for that 17th offensive rating. So yeah, they've been a much improved team. A lot of credits, and I think any other year, JB Bickerstaff is the clear winner for Coach of the Year. But a lot of very good options out there so far this season.
There are, but that again should not overshadow what JB has done in Detroit, because a lot of the cast that has returned this season is the same as last year. Again, they made some key additions with the vets that they brought in, with Hardaway, with Tobias, with Malik Beasley. But a lot of the guys are still the same that they had last year. The coaching direction has been a lot more solid. The team makes a lot more sense. Cade has continued to say, like, hey, what you saw last year, it's just a taste. I'm continuing to get better. And Detroit's team that you have to respect. That's why the season ending the way that it is with the Bucks and the Pistons with 2 back-to-back games. The NBA probably couldn't have known at that time, like, hey, these teams are going to be this close in the standings, but it is going to be an important way to close the season, because I do think that those last 2 games are going to have an impact on the standings and where these 2 teams end up finishing out. And I'll be curious to see, based on health of the Milwaukee Bucks too, like how they're playing it down the stretch. I feel like this is a Bucks team that needs to try to continue to rack up wins, but we have heard them mention themselves that if they are healthy, they believe like the seeding doesn't matter and they're ready to go in the playoffs. So we'll see. But those last 2 games against Detroit, those should be really, really fun.
They should, and there's more similarities there between these 2 teams. We will get into that conversation in just a moment here. And I suppose answer the question too, how much trouble are the Bucks actually in? We will do that coming up after this. The last similarity between these 2 teams and the Bucks and Pistons, Camille, is fourth quarter play. The Bucks have the 5th full season, not just post All-Star break, 5th best fourth quarter defense at a 108.1. The Pistons are number 4 at a 107.7. The Bucks, as has been well documented, are nowhere near where you would like to be. They're 29th in offensive efficiency in the fourth quarter. The Pistons are 25th. The difference, though, is that gap from 29 to 25 is very significant, because the Pistons are in the top 10 in net rating in the fourth quarter at number 9, but the Bucks are close to number 20 at a negative 1.8. So a lot of similarities exist between these 2 teams, and it's setting the table for a very big final weekend between these 2 squads here. So I guess we didn't really answer the question. How much trouble are they in? Like, where would you say right now the Bucks are going to finish the season in the standings?
5th. I feel like it's probably going to be in that 5 spot. And as you were just setting this all up, the injury report, the first one for the Bucks, has come out now, with Dame out, Bobby out as expected, Jericho out as expected, but Giannis is questionable against Denver with a left foot sprain. So when you talk about how much trouble they might be in regards to where they fall or finish in the standings, if this is a Bucks team that's playing Denver without Giannis in addition to without Dame, I would feel as if this road trip probably ends 2-3 at that point. So again, the standings get even tighter, especially with the Pistons playing tonight. So the Bucks, the 4 seed could be fading farther and farther away from them. But as I said, it could be a situation for this Bucks team where they're like, listen, at this point, we just want to get there healthy. However it falls, as long as we don't fall into the play-in, which I don't really see that being a scenario for this Milwaukee Bucks team at this point. But you stay above that 6 line, you're all right. But for me, I would have loved for them to be able to finish in that 4 seed, which is why I kept saying, like, there's mathematically hope. Like, it's still right there. But it feels like it's getting a little bit further and further away.
Yeah, I would also project them to finish 5th here, and like we've said this time and time again, and you get a lot of Bucks fans that go along with you and agree with it until you start to see 2 or 3 straight losses, and then it's, oh, we gotta react to this. But this being, none of this matters if you're not healthy. So, taking your time and taking some losses, and Doc even said this in the post game presser last night of, I just don't really care about regular season win loss, and I don't lose sleep over that. It's, we lost, okay, let's move on to the next one, and let's make sure we're playing good and healthy going into the playoffs. So obviously that first part you can do something about and are going to look to do something about. But not a surprising initial injury reports that either of us had anticipated here. This Denver Nuggets team, though, they're in an interesting spot too, where I think you would just look at the recent string of events for Denver and just kind of think like, oh man, they've really been struggling and dropping a handful of games. It's not entirely the case. They're still third in the Western Conference, much like the Bucks. They've gone 4-6 in their last 10 games. But again, Nikola Jokic's absence was a big piece, or has been a big piece of that. But the teams they've lost to, the Chicago Bulls, who outside of the Pacers are probably the hottest team in the Eastern Conference. The Wizards have become a professional basketball. It's still a bad loss. You had Nikola Jokic and everybody else available, but the Wizards have become a professional basketball team since the trade deadline. They lost to the Timberwolves. They lost to the Lakers, and that was the second game. So the Lakers had their guys for that game. They lost to the Portland Trail Blazers, who have been a frisky team. They split with the Oklahoma City Thunder. So the point being, these losses that the Nuggets have taken look a lot different than the losses that the Bucks are taking here of late.
Yeah, and the way it's happening has been really interesting too, because if you look at the numbers with it, as you mentioned, when Nikola Jokic is not playing for Denver, it's going to change the equation entirely. I mean, you see that when he's playing, he just hits the bench, what it looks like when he's just getting some rest. So you can expect some wonky things to happen in games where he's not playing, but out of the All-Star break, like Denver's 9-9. The offense is still a top 10 offense, according to the numbers, looking at offensive rating, 119.5. But the defense for the Denver Nuggets has been a problem for them throughout the entire season. You get spurts of great activity, but as a whole, just have not been that great, a bottom 5 defense out of All-Star break. And a big difference with this team so far after the break is just that they've been turning the ball over a bit more than what you saw prior to the break. And again, if Jokic is not playing for this Nuggets team tomorrow, it bodes well for the Milwaukee Bucks, because you have an MVP contender who is not on the court for them, and he's really the engine for that team. But they have some pieces in their game where it's like the Bucks can be able to take advantage of that, because some of the things that they do well, one of them in particular, the Bucks have struggled with, which is like just making sure you're cleaning up the glass. The Nuggets are a team that do love to crash the offensive glass, so the Bucks are going to have to make sure that they're stout and being fundamental with making sure they have a body on somebody. But it's a matchup for them where if you can pull that one out and finish this road trip 3-2, you just feel a lot better about this West Coast trip. But again, the injury report dictates a bit of it, and if Giannis doesn't go, it'll be really interesting to see how this Bucks team responds.
I mean, look, if history is any indication here, not just with the Bucks, with the entire league, if Giannis doesn't go, it means the Bucks are going to win this game, to not have Giannis and Damian Lillard and Bobby Portis and you name it in this one. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see later on tonight when that game is played between the Bucks and the Nuggets. We'll have more updates on the injury report throughout the day, and I would just encourage Bucks fans to keep an eye on that for anything that may come out, but certainly the updates to the injury report as we get closer and closer to that game. A couple other things I just wanted to point out before we do sign off here, Camille. The last 10 games, we mentioned the 4-6 record for the Bucks. The numbers have not been pretty. Offense is number 17. Which I suppose, hey, consistency, because that's right around where it is for the season as a whole. But the defense has slid all the way down to 13th in the last 10 games now, which, again, for where it at, where it's at a 112.7 rating, and to sit at 13th coming into the season. If those were the numbers that we gave you, you'd think, great, I can work with this. Good enough with the offense. It's just the offense has not been to that level that we saw for half of last season. And, one other piece to point out, what we've touched on a couple of times, some of the shooting in the last 10 games. So this is the importance of this is it's one game after. It starts the game after that win against the Dallas Mavericks. Who would you assume has been the Bucks' best three-point shooter during that stretch?
Over the last 10 games?
10 games.
It's got to be either Gary Trent Jr. or Brook Lopez, I would say.
It is Gary Trent Jr., who has hit 28 of 64 threes in those 10 games, good for 44%. Dame has played in 7 of those 10, and he's shooting 34% on threes. Taurean Prince is shooting 42%. Brook Lopez, to your point, is shooting 46%. Even Kevin Porter Jr. is 15 of 28 on threes in that stretch, so he's above 50%. But the two that stand out, Kyle Kuzma is 13 of 50. That is 26% shooting from three. But Camille, our guy AJ Green is 10 of 36 since hitting 6 of 9 against the Dallas Mavericks. So in those 10 games, AJ Green is shooting 27% on threes.
And that is unexpected for a guy who's been like a career 40% three-point shooter. You don't expect that, especially with the looks that he's getting. And like we said on yesterday's episode, for AJ Green in particular, my advice is a little bit different than the one to Kyle Kuzma. Keep shooting AJ Green. Keep putting them up. I mean, he just has to. Like, he is going through a big shooting slump, and he has the record to know that he is a better shooter than what we have been seeing over the last 10 games. So he has to continue to put those shots up. And let me rewind that. Kyle Kuzma, shoot the open, catch and shoot threes as well. Need you to shoot the open ones, but the other stuff, we can tone that down. But all in all, like, hearing that AJ Green is shooting that poorly, I'm sure that does tank the Bucks offense a bit, because he's one of those guys you really count on, really depend on to be someone who's spacing the floor and giving you something from 3 points. So 28% from three, that's got to come up for AJ Green. Yeah,
it is what they would call suboptimal to see 28% shooting from the outside there. Continue to leave your thoughts on the Bucks lineups and some of the things we touched on with the Kyle Kuzma impact. And we'll get into that discussion coming up here. Our next show is going to be the post-game recap of the Bucks and the Denver Nuggets, and then another big week next week to start to run through here. So that'll do it for today's show. For Camille, I'm Justin. We will talk with you guys once again tomorrow on Locked On Bucks.